The jungle screamed with life, a cacophony of unseen creatures clawing at my nerves as I stumbled through the underbrush. I was 24, a city kid from Seattle, and I had no business being here, in the humid, suffocating wilds of an Oregon forest reserve, with a man I barely knew. My heart pounded, not from fear of the wilderness, but from the weight of Ethan's gaze, my father's old friend, who led me deeper into the green abyss. I'm Jordan, and I'd always been the odd one out, too soft for my dad's rugged world of hunting trips and barroom bravado. He was a former Marine, all grit and grit, and I was the son who'd rather sketch cityscapes than fire a rifle. When he insisted I'd join his buddy Ethan on this bonding trip, I couldn't say no. Dad thought it'd toughen me up, make me a man. But as Ethan turned to me, his brown eyes catching the fading sunlight, I felt something else entirely, a pull that had nothing to do with proving myself. Ethan was 28, a park ranger with a quiet strength that made my palms sweat. He'd known my dad since their college days, back when they'd bonded over late-night poker and cheap beer. Dad called him the best shot in Oregon, but to me, Ethan was a mystery, 6 feet of lean muscle, with a short beard and a smile that felt like a secret meant only for me. "Stay close, Jordan," he said, his voice low and steady. "This place doesn't forgive mistakes." I nodded, my throat tight, wondering if he could hear my heartbeat over the jungle's pulse. The trail was narrow, forcing us shoulder to shoulder, his flannel sleeve brushing my arm. Every step felt like a dare, every glance a question I wasn't ready to answer. I'd known I was gay since I was 15, but I'd buried it under layers of sarcasm and solitude, especially around Dad. Ethan, though, he saw through me. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that made me feel exposed, like he could read the parts of me I'd never spoken aloud. "Ever shot a gun before?" Ethan asked, pausing to adjust the rifle slung over his shoulder. His eyes locked on mine, and I swore the air thickened. "Nope," I admitted, shoving my hands in my pockets. "Dad tried teaching me once." I was terrible, he chuckled, a sound that warmed the damp chill around us. "Doesn't matter. This trip isn't about that." His words hung there, heavy with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. Was he humoring me for Dad's sake? Or was there something more? As night fell, we set up camp near a small clearing. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced across Ethan's face. He handed me a tin mug of coffee, his fingers grazing mine for a split second too long. My breath caught, and I looked away, pretending to study the flames. "You're not like your dad," he said suddenly, his voice soft but deliberate. "That's not a bad thing, Jordan." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. For the first time, I wondered if this trip wasn't about hunting at all, not for Ethan, and maybe not for me either. Morning broke with a chorus of birds, their calls sharp against the jungle's damp silence. I woke to find Ethan already up, crouched by the fire, his navy flannel shirt rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. He was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, like a painting you're afraid to touch. I sat up, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and caught him watching me. "Sleep okay?" he asked, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Barely," I muttered, my voice rough. The ground was hard, but it wasn't the dirt keeping me awake, it was him. Every rustle of his sleeping bag, every quiet breath he took, had felt like a current pulling me under. We packed up and moved deeper into the reserve, the trail growing wilder, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. Ethan taught me to spot tracks, deer, mostly, though he said we weren't here to shoot anything. It's about understanding the land, he explained, pointing out a faint hoof print in the mud. His passion for the wilderness was infectious, and I found myself hanging on his every word, not because I cared about tracks, but because I cared about him. By noon, we stopped at a stream to refill our canteens. Ethan knelt by the water, his reflection rippling beside him, and I couldn't stop staring. He caught me. Of course. "What's on your mind?" "Jordan," he asked, standing and wiping his hands on his shorts. "Nothing, elite." My face burning. But he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, and I felt the truth clawing its way out. "Okay, fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why'd you agree to this trip? You didn't have to babysit me." He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. "I wanted to," he said simply. "Your dad's a good guy, but he doesn't see you." "I do." My heart stuttered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," he said, stepping even closer, "I see how hard you try to be what he wants. And I see who you really are." His voice was gentle, but it cut through me like a blade. I wanted to ask what he saw, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned away, splashing water on my face to hide the heat in my cheeks. That night, as we sat by the fire, Ethan told me stories about growing up in rural Oregon, about coming out to his family at 19 and losing half of them in the process. "It's not easy," he said, staring into the flames. "But you find people who make it worth it." His eyes flicked to me, and I felt like I was falling, like the ground beneath me had vanished. The third day brought rain, a steady drizzle that turned the jungle into a maze of slick roots and muddy trails. Ethan was unfazed, navigating with a confidence I envied. I was a mess, soggy, shivering, and hyper-aware of every accidental touch as we squeezed through narrow paths. His hand grazed mine when he helped me over a fallen log, and I nearly tripped from the jolt it sent through me. "Careful," he said, his grip firm but gentle. "I've got you." I mumbled a thanks, my heart racing. Got me? What did that even mean? I wanted to believe it was more than a figure of speech, but doubt gnawed at me. Ethan was older, wiser, and way out of my league. Why would he see me as anything but his friend's awkward kid? We stopped early to shelter under a rocky overhang, the rain drumming a steady rhythm. Ethan pulled out a small flask of whiskey from his pack, offering it to me with a grin. "To warm you up," he said. I took a sip, coughing as it burned my throat, and he laughed, a sound that felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Tell me something about you," he said, leaning back against the rock. "Something real." I hesitated. Real was dangerous. Real was admitting I'd spent years hiding who I was, terrified of what Dad would think. But Ethan's eyes were steady, safe, and I found myself talking about the sketchbook I kept hidden, about the nights I'd spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever be brave enough to live openly. He listened, really listened, and when I finished, he didn't say anything. He just reached out, his hand resting on my knee, warm and grounding. "You're braver than you think," he said finally. "Takes guts to carry all that and still show up." I wanted to kiss him then, to close the distance between us and see if his lips were as warm as his words. But fear held me back, and I settled for a shaky smile instead. The rain slowed, and we moved on, but something had shifted. The air between us felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. By the fourth day, the jungle felt less like a threat and more like a cocoon, wrapping us in its humid embrace. Ethan was different out here, freer, like the wildness let him shed the weight of the world. I caught myself watching him more openly now, memorizing the way his jaw tightened when he focused, the way his laugh lines deepened when he teased me about my city boy clumsiness. We found a clearing that afternoon, a rare patch of sunlight breaking through the canopy. Ethan dropped his pack and stretched out on the grass, arms behind his head, his shirt riding up to reveal a sliver of tan skin. "Join me," he said, patting the ground beside him. I hesitated, then lay down, our shoulders inches apart. The sky above was a vivid blue, and for a moment, it was just us and the jungle's heartbeat. "You ever think about what you want?" he asked, his voice soft. "Not what your dad wants, or anyone else. Just you." I turned my head, meeting his gaze. "I want to be free," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "To not feel like I'm hiding all the time." He rolled onto his side, propping himself on one elbow. "You don't have to hide with me," he said, and the sincerity in his voice broke something open inside me. I reached out, my fingers brushing his, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he laced his fingers with mine, his thumb tracing slow circles on my skin. It was the smallest gesture, but it felt like a promise. That night, as we sat by the fire, he leaned closer, his shoulder pressed against mine. "Jordan," he said, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames, "I'm not good at this, but I feel something with you. Something real." My heart stopped, then surged. "Me too," I whispered, and when he leaned in, his lips brushing mine, it was like the jungle itself held its breath. The kiss was soft, tentative, but set my world on fire. The fifth day was a blur of stolen glances and fleeting touches. Every step felt like a dance, every word a confession. Ethan was careful, never pushing, but his presence was a constant pull, drawing me out of the shell I'd built around myself. We talked about everything, his dreams of opening a wilderness school, my sketches of city lights and quiet moments. He asked to see my drawings, and when I showed him a page from my sketchbook, his fingers lingered on the paper, his eyes soft with something I didn't dare name. But reality crept in like the evening chill. My dad was waiting back in Seattle, expecting stories of hunting triumphs, not whispered confessions in the dark. I could still hear his voice from years ago, dismissing a neighbor's son who'd come out. "He's confused. That's all. What would he say if he knew about me? About us?" Ethan sensed my mood, his hand finding mine as we set up camp. "You're thinking too hard," he said, squeezing gently. "Whatever's waiting out there, it's not here. Not now." He was right, but the fear lingered. That night, as we lay side by side in our sleeping bags, he reached for my hand again. "I've got you," he said, echoing his words from the rain-soaked day. This time, I believed him. The jungle seemed to mirror our closeness. Its sound softer, its shadows less threatening. We kissed again, slower this time, and I let myself sink into it, into him. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe, like I could be the version of myself I'd always kept locked away. The final morning dawned too soon. The jungle bathed in a golden haze. We packed in silence, the weight of the real world pressing closer with every step toward the trailhead. Ethan was quieter too, his usual confidence tinged with something heavier. I wanted to ask what happened next, what we were when we left this place, but the words stuck in my throat. As we reached the edge of the reserve, he stopped, turning to face me. "Jordan," he said, his voice rough. "This week wasn't just a trip for me. You're not just my friend's kid. You're everything I didn't expect." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice breaking. He stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. "We figure out," he said. "Together. But you need to decide what you want. Jordan. Not for your dad. Not for me, for you." I thought of Dad, of the life I'd been hiding from, of the fear that had kept me silent for so long. And I thought of Ethan, of the way he saw me, really saw me, and made me believe I could be more. "I want this," I said, my voice steady for the first time. "I want us." He smiled, a real smile that lit up his eyes, and kissed me, right there at the edge of the jungle, where the wild met the world. It wasn't a promise of forever, but it was a start, a step toward a life where I didn't have to hide. We drove back to Seattle in his beat-up truck, the city skyline rising like a challenge. I didn't know what I'd say to Dad, or how I'd face the questions waiting for me. But with Ethan's hand resting on mine, I knew I wasn't alone. The jungle had changed me, not because of the hunt, but because of what I'd found there, a heart brave enough to love, and a man who made me believe I was worth loving.